Soul. The soul is the energetic and subtle matter component that animates the physical body life after life. This subtle body, known as the soul, comes from the monad, the first emanation of the demiurge. Now, let's talk about the function and faculty of the soul, since they are different concepts. In the book we read that the function of the soul is to assimilate the evolutionary degree and maintain it after death. Here we refer to the evolutionary degree of the soul, not the body. This is important to highlight to avoid confusion. We are talking about the degree of the soul, not the body. Death. After the death of the physical body, the individual soul continues to exist and transfers its evolution to another body. However, what is not transferred is genetics or biology, as these belong to the deceased physical body. Thus, the soul will inhabit another body with a new genetics and biology, but it will preserve in the next body its degree of evolution, what it has achieved on its path towards entelechy, the perfection determined by the demiurge. The soul does not die, but rather transmigrates from one body to another, hence the term transmigrant soul. Think. We have already defined the function of the soul as that of assimilating the evolutionary degree and maintaining it after death. Next, we will talk about the main faculty of the soul, which is not the same as its function. According to the book, the main faculty of the soul is thinking, which allows the unity of the monad to be expressed. Thinking is the act of a thinking subject. Let's break this down. First, the main faculty of the soul is thinking. What is the difference between function and faculty? Faculty is an innate capacity, a talent that a person may or may not exercise. For example, Juan has a talent for music, but he dedicates himself to painting. Instead, function is a task that must be performed. In this case, Juan's task would be to teach music if he had that role assigned. We said that the main faculty of the soul is thinking, a faculty that may or may not be put into practice. The function of the soul, which we said was to assimilate what has evolved, is a task that is carried out no matter what. We will insist on this point later. By exercising the faculty of thinking, we are expressing the unity of the monad. Thinking is the act of a thinking subject, that is, the subject who performs the act of thinking. Thinking subject. Here is something interesting. Being a thinking subject is not the same as being a soul. Both perform the act of thinking, but in different ways. The thinking subject performs the function of thinking during one life, while the soul does so during many lives, through multiple incarnations. The thinking subject does not always exist, dies when the person dies. Thus, we can say that the thinking subject is an aspect of the soul during a single incarnation. On the other hand, the soul always exists and, after the dissolution of the physical body, transmigrates to another body and so on. That is why we say that the soul is transmigrant. The thinking subject needs a vehicle to carry out the act of thinking. This vehicle is the psychic structure of man, which disappears after death, allowing the soul to manifest itself in another psychic structure. Reincarnation and transmigration of soul. I'm going to give an example. Suppose that I am the soul and I have to make a journey of 13,000 kilometers. I will use several means of transportation: car, train and plane. These vehicles represent the psychic structures where the soul manifests itself. Even if you change vehicles, the soul remains the same. Every time I change vehicles, I adopt a different identity. I use a different personality. In the analogy, every time the soul manifests itself in a psychic structure, it does so with different thinking subjects and different people. This is what we call reincarnation. In conclusion, the soul is the same throughout the journey and is called the transmigrating soul. The thinking subject is only the manifestation of the soul during a period of its evolution and incarnation. perform the act of thinking in different vehicles, in different psychic structures. Conclusion. Finally, I want to make a personal reflection on what we have talked about today. While I don't claim this to be the ultimate truth, it is for me. The more times the soul changes its body, or rather, its psychic structure, the closer we get to the perfection of the soul as the demiurge determined it. Thus, it is worth asking, is an old soul, who has been reincarnated many times, really wise? I would say not. An old soul may simply be fulfilling a demiurgic goal, evolving to achieve entelechy. On the other hand, there are souls that resist evolving, fitting in, adapting. These souls may not want to reincarnate, motivated by the spirit, that part of us that does not accept the presence of the soul. They see it as a parasite. And finally, live strategically. Let's live knowing this truth and resist, even if we feel strange. Being different can make us feel like foreigners on this prison planet with its absurd laws and regulations. However, we must also counteract this feeling so as not to complicate our existence further. We must follow the rules of the game when necessary to make our lives easier. Live strategically.